What's going on, Packers fans? Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. We're going to be joined by Paul Bretl, as you can see him on the screen in just a moment. Before we get there, just want to remind you that today's show is presented by Alchemy Wealth Management. RetireWithRyan.net. Get your financial future in order with Ryan. Ryan Nelson, he's the absolute best to work with. Cannot recommend him enough. You get that free consultation set up again over at retirewithryan.net. So what are you waiting for? That offer is going to end very soon. So make sure to check it out before it goes away. And again, I cannot recommend enough retirewithryan.net and Alchemy Wealth Management. Now we bring in, of course, the one and only Paul Bretl. You can find him on social media at Paul_Bretl. Paul, it was a game that was played on Monday Night Football. It was not certainly what we wanted from that one. We'll get into all of it and break it all down. But before we get there, how are you doing on this beautiful Tuesday?
I'm good, Andy. Happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Always great chatting with you. We do have a lot to get into. It was not the game that we were hoping for. As always, I will give you the floor to begin with and let you pontificate on your key takeaways from this game.
Yeah, I think there's just so many different paths to go down with this one. I mean, isn't there? And honestly, just from even the offensive perspective, but I think, and we see this unfolding on the football field, but when Matt LaFleur is asked, what has to change, what has to be fixed, right? And he said something to the effect of, well, if I had these answers, I probably wouldn't be answering this question. And then in the locker room, Josh Jacobs talking about how they're still searching for what those answers are to what's taking place. And again, that isn't any sort of groundbreaking news because we're seeing what's unfolding on the football field. Clearly, this offense does not have the answers right now. And it's a lot of what we talked about last week, right? It's the inability in the run game to get going against those shell coverage looks and just the trickle-down effect that has. And you're behind the sticks or there's a penalty. And now you're trying to make up that lost ground to put yourself in an advantageous situation, but you're in a disadvantageous spot. And then there's a self-inflicted mistakes on top of that. And the Packers just are not forcing defenses to change. They're not forcing them to break away from how they are defending them. And it's just, I think I used vicious cycle last week. And that's what this is right now. It's just repeating over and over and over the same things. And I get why early on Matt LaFleur wanted to run the ball, because that's one of the biggest things that has to improve to find some sort of overall success against how defenses are defending them. And right now, because the Packers can't run the football, it feels like the formula is out, right? Like defenses know, here is what we have to do to slow this Packers offense. It's happened the last 2 weeks. Even defenses in previous weeks, like we've talked about, who aren't necessarily this Vic Fangio, too high safety team, are still using those looks against Green Bay because they are so effective. So the book is out right now. Like, here's how you defend the Packers, because they're struggling in the run game. They're inconsistent. So putting these long drives together, like, that's a challenge right now because of penalties, because of drops, incomplete passes, struggles in the run game. And so it's tough to put up points that way. And the Packers' own self-inflicted mistakes are making that even more difficult. So how they overcome that, right? I mean, that's the big question right now. And internally, that's the answer that they're searching for. They're trying to find.
You mentioned vicious cycle. I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It also feels like teams are getting even more adept at running that style of defense against Green Bay, where things are even getting taken away at a higher level than we've seen other teams run. They're picking up things from what other teams are doing against Green Bay, and they're even doing it more effectively over time. And to me, there's a lot of attention to detail here too, is going back and watching some of the film already, and certainly watching the TV copy of the game after we saw it live. You're seeing guys collide in the passing game, plays. There are a lot of plays in this game where they're just a half a degree off, where there's something that's developing there and they just can't execute it the right way. And I think what's discouraging is it feels like, again, I don't know if this offense is pressing too much because of some of the issues that are out there, and because of what opposing defenses are doing against them. But it feels like the attention to detail and some of the stuff that even they were doing well earlier in the season, they just can't execute on right now. I think it starts up front with the offensive line. You can't run the football. And then I think, again, they're pressing a little bit on offense. And I think the other thing too, and I think a lot of people have talked about predictability of the offense. I think for a while, Matt had a really good system of sort of checks in place of like, basically like a series of if then statements of like, if the defense shows this, then we're going to check to this and do this. And it, so for an example, if the defense is loading the box, then we're going to throw the quick run solution to the outside. And it almost feels like teams are just on top of that. Like the book is out on Matt as well of some of the stuff that he likes to check. I mean, obviously they were calling out the 4th down play on 4th and 1 along the line of scrimmage. And we've seen like the run solution where Savion fumbled a week ago, like that corner just crashes on that thing so insanely fast where, you almost get the tell of like, hey, if they come out in this, 2 wide receiver stack bunch look on the outside and we show, if we show a loaded box, we know exactly what they're going to do on the outside. I don't think it's quite that simplistic, but it does feel like defenses really have a beat on what Matt LaFleur in this offense likes to do, their tendencies, and in some cases on the 4th and 1 call, even exactly what they're going to call on that play. And I don't know if too, there's maybe some tells on the offense or what they're doing, because there was a couple other run plays where it felt like the defense reacted to it almost before it happened, but they're going to have to do in a very short week some very serious self-scouting and figure out why it is that opposing defenses are basically reading them like a book right now.
Yeah, and I think the tightness, I think, is the word you used to kind of describe the offense. That's exactly what it feels like, right? It's like even when maybe there's this look that you get that is advantageous for you or one you can put yourself in a good position, it's like, oh, here it is, because you're not getting a lot of those. So you feel like you have to, like, this is it. We have to take advantage of it. And then just that overall tightness, right? It's difficult to execute in those situations. And to your point on those outside plays, I think a lot of that, again, is a product of the Packers' inability between the tackles. So if you're Matt LaFleur, you're trying to, those toss plays, screens, end arounds, whatever it might be, you're trying to spread the defense out horizontally to hopefully help open up some opportunities between the tackles, because you're not finding success in the run game. But from a defensive perspective, you're not really worried about matching up with the Packers' offensive line. So when they try to get out in space, you can almost lean towards protecting, right, those parts of the field with your additional defenders, knowing that, one, the Packers do want to try to do that to spread you out. But if you are going to do that and then leave yourself maybe numbers-wise shorthanded in the middle of the field, you're not all that worried from a defensive perspective going up against this run game, because it just hasn't been effective. And so the Packers are playing from a numbers disadvantage in a sense right now on the perimeter, because along the interior between the tackles, they just aren't finding success where they should be having the numbers advantage, where they should be having the upper hand, and the defense is capitalizing.
It's such a great point, because we talk all the time of like, oh, wait till Christian Watson comes back so that you can stretch the defense and get those 2 safeties high. The safeties are already playing high. They can't. They're not going to play much higher than what you're playing right now. They're playing that 2 high safety. And to your point, a lot of the stuff that you run on the quick screens to the outside, or the end arounds and the reverses and things like that, it's to get the defense to spread. They're already spaced out.
Yes.
Like you don't even need to work right now with the end arounds or the reverses or the deep passing game to get the defense spaced out. They're as spaced as they can pretty much possibly be at this point in time, and you just can't get any movement up front to take advantage of it. And I'm sure, for Matt, he's looking at this and saying, I'm getting everything I want. I get the defense that's spread out wide. They're spread out vertically. The safeties are deep. We're getting a super advantageous box to run against. And I've got Josh Jacobs at running back. Of course, I'm going to keep calling running plays. And yet at the same time, it just feels like you're running into a brick wall over and over and over again. And at some point, you got to do something different. But that's really hard when the defense is spread as far and wide as it is, and you just can't attack it where you need to attack it. And yeah, that it just almost sums up in a very succinct way exactly how things are going for Green Bay. The easiest solution to beat what defenses are doing against them, they can't execute, and it's a house of cards. It all sort of just kind of crumbles underneath that.
Yeah, I think you were the one who posted this last night, where it just, for Matt LaFleur, it has to feel like his play sheet right now is just insanely small in terms of just not being able to move it on the ground, and just how there's not a lot of room to operate.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the meme on the sidelines of him, over on the sidelines with the tablet and his play sheet. It almost looks like he's crossing off plays on the play sheet. It's just he's going back to the drawing board. And again, that's not absolving Matt of some of the stuff that's going on. It just, as a play caller, it gets really tough when the stuff that you need to call in those situations isn't being called. And certainly Matt's got to find a way to have better solutions for that moving forward as well. You were obviously in the locker room afterwards asking questions. What did you get from the morale of the locker room? How were players feeling? How were they answering questions? Like what was your vibe in the locker room?
I mean, it was what you'd expect. It was frustration. That's the word that I would use to describe it. And, with Josh Jacobs, right, talking about how, they're just searching for answers right now. And then that's probably the most frustrating part of this for these guys, right? Like you watch the tape, you see what's happening, right? Like like I mentioned earlier, like how defenses are defending the Packers shouldn't be much of a surprise anymore, right? But even in knowing that and knowing what you have to do to go out there to be successful, and you're still not able to do that, again, frustrating, I think, is the perfect way to describe it. And right, that sense runs throughout the locker room. But I'll also say as well, from a defensive perspective, this team is still very much knows the talent that is on this roster, both offensively and defensively. Micah Parsons talked about that. Keyshawn Nixon talked about we're one team. It doesn't matter if the defense has a really good day or how things unfold. If we lose, we lose. It's on all of us. So there's still belief, right? Because again, and we've seen it this season too. I know it's inconsistency. The last 2 weeks have been rough, but we've seen some really good stretches of football from this team. Like it's there. They know the capabilities, right? It's unlocking it consistently is what they're chasing. They know the talent that's there as well. So there's frustration, but also there's 8 games left in the season still, and they know the potential, the talent that they have. Now, of course, it's making that become a reality, right? And showing the results on the field. That's the part that they have to fix.
Yeah, that's going to obviously be the key to this. They've got New York coming up, Minnesota after that. Those are going to feel like 2 must wins for Green Bay, but maybe an opportunity to get this turned around before you head to Detroit on Thanksgiving for what it feels like is going to be a massive game, at least if Green Bay can get things corrected over the course of the next couple weeks. I liked Micah Parsons after the game, basically saying, quote, "I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't stress. We're going to win football games. I promise you." Love that message from him. Sometimes these things in sports, you hit a wall, or, sometimes you kind of have to hit rock bottom before you start finding the solutions that you need, and you get desperate and you start making the changes that ultimately were needed in the first place. I wish that wake-up call happened against Cleveland. I wish it happened against Dallas. I wish it happened against Carolina. Maybe this is another opportunity for that, but hopefully they can find the answers. I'm with you. I think the talent is still there, but they've got to find some solutions and some answers clearly sooner rather than later, and that starts this week again against New York. Let's talk a little bit on the positive side of things about that defensive performance. It's an interesting performance defensively. They clearly wanted to limit some of the playmaking from Philly's playmakers. They didn't have I don't believe they had a quarterback hit or a sack on the. I know they didn't have a sack. I don't think they had a quarterback hit on the day. Either way, it wasn't a super disruptive, attacking Jalen Hurts sort of day from the Packers defensive front, but completely limited Saquon Barkley outside of one check down to the outside where he made a move on Carrington Valentine in the open field. But from a running game standpoint, I think he was like less than 3 yards per carry or right around there. And, AJ Brown had almost no impact. Devontae Smith had a couple big catches in the game, but overall, you completely hold this Eagles offense in check, allow only 10 points, get a turnover, and do everything you can despite being behind the 8 ball, or at least even where the Eagles offense had run pass option. They didn't have to press. They weren't predictable the entire game. And still this Packers defense held them in check.
Yeah, I mean, holding Saquon to under 3 yards per rush. I think he had 60 yards in total on the ground. And Colby Wooden flies under the radar. One, it's the nature of his position, right? Nose tackle, run defender. You're not going to fill the stat sheet. And 2, he went from being a rotational player at best sometimes he was a healthy scratch, I think, at least once or twice last season, to now being thrust into, you are one of our key starters on the defensive line, but his presence, he is impactful in that middle. And whether that shows up in tackles or not, but his ability to take on blockers, to eat up space, to help free up the guys around him. I mean, Halfley talked about after that Carolina game where he exited, right? Like, that wasn't the not having Kobe on the field for that second half wasn't the sole reason behind why Carolina found success, but it sounded like it was a pretty big one. And I think seeing him play, or how he played against Philadelphia, you can really see his impact that he has on that run defense. And I also think as well, outside of that missed tackle you had mentioned, I thought that there was sound tackling in this game from Green Bay. Like, felt like there was a couple runs where like Saquon was really, really close to just breaking one. But that whether it's the last two defenders, they were able to bring them down, and then just the swarming to the ball carrier. So really, when the run defense operates at the level that the Packers did, that's an all 11. That is everyone being on the same page from sound tackling, rallying to the ball, run fit standpoint. And that's where a lot of the success that the overall defense had yesterday started, right? If you can stop the run, keep them behind the sticks, you're going to put them in predictable passing situations, make them one-dimensional. And outside of that first drive that Philadelphia had, they were 3 for 3 on that drive on their first third downs, and then 3 for 4 after the fumble. I believe they were 4 for 13 on third downs the remainder of that game. So a success rate of about 31%, which if you look at that number compared to the rest of the NFL over the entire season, that would be near the bottom, if not at the bottom. So stopping the run was a big part of that, putting them behind the sticks, and then being able to get off the field.
Hey, friends, let's get our sleeper picks in for this upcoming Sunday. Rams, Seahawks. This one has the ability to be unbelievably epic. Who would have thought that going into the season? But let's make it a little bit more epic with sleeper. I'm going super simple on this one. The two most dynamic receivers in the NFL right now, Puka Nacua and Jackson Smith-Njigba, to both score touchdowns in this game. Jackson Smith-Njigba, more than 1/2 touchdown scored. Puka Nacua, more than 1/2 touchdown scored. I'm going to say they both score in this game in this must-have NFC West matchup. You can get your sleeper picks in, of course, over on Sleeper. Make it a little bit more fun. Make sure you get them in for Thursday Night Football, Sunday Football, Monday Night Football. Anytime there's football, it's awesome to do. The best part is that you can get a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code PACKADAY. Again, a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code PACKADAY. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper for details. Of course, they are available in over 25 states nationwide. So what are you waiting for? Get your sleeper picks in right now. Yeah, going back to Colby Wooden for a moment, maybe this is oversimplifying things, and it's certainly, Green Bay didn't play well enough to win in that game anyway, but just Colby Wooden in and of himself, going back to that Carolina game, if you have him in that the remainder of that game, I think some of that run defense looks a whole heck of a lot different. And maybe they come away with a win. Maybe again, that's over aggressive, but that's how important he's been to the run defense. And I thought he was fantastic. Like you mentioned, again, at least at first glance, we'll kind of look at it the all-22 later this week. But at first and second glance, I thought Colby Wooden had a really important day and was clearly a key cog in sort of bottling up Saquon Barkley throughout the course of the day. That does bring another point here. This is not meant to be any sort of overarching excuse for the level of play, the lack of attention to detail, the game planning, the play calling, anything like that. I do think it's at least worth noting some of the injuries that this team has had to deal with, and there's injuries all throughout the league. So again, not an excuse per se. We talked about Colby last week on the defensive line that really hurt them in the middle of the defense. There's parts of this second half of the game. You're down by 10, and Romeo Doubs is out of the lineup with the chest injury that he gets in the game. We know Tucker Kraft is out for the year. Jaden Reed is still out. And, I think Dontavian Wicks and, Christian Watson, while they played a lot, probably still on some sort of snap count. I remember a play specifically in this game. And of course, Elton Jenkins goes out as well with his injury, with his ankle injury. And I remember a play where I think it was Musgrave at tight end. I'm pretty sure it was Emmanuel Wilson in the backfield. And it's Savion Williams, Bo Melton, and Malik Heath as your wide receivers that are out on the field. And listen, this team was touted for its depth and being able to handle situations like this. It's something that they need to be able to overcome. Bo Melton had an opportunity to make a big play in a fourth down, wasn't able to come up with it. Those opportunities were still there. But it is worth noting when, Christian is, again, not 100% and still on a snap count. Dontavian Wicks is in his first game back, and you're literally without Tucker Kraft, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs. It makes it insanely tough on offense to have that level of consistency at the same time. And clearly Green Bay was missing that playmaking threat, especially from guys like Tucker Kraft and Jaden Reed.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of the equation. And it's at the end of the day, it's like you said, it's not an excuse. Every team is battling injuries, but we also have to recognize it as a factor, right?
Yeah.
In all of this, it doesn't mean there shouldn't be play designs, whatever it needs to be to overcome that. That needs to be a part of it, but we need to recognize it and not to continue just going back to the run game, but it circles back to that, right? If you're shorthanded at your playmaker positions, you need to help those guys out and find some success on the ground. And again, the comments on the run game, this isn't about Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs did everything he could in that game to pick up hard fought yards and like 2 yards, 3 yards, making defenders miss in the backfield. This is on the offensive line having to find a way to be better. And one of the things we keep hearing is it's the details, right? That's the maybe the buzzword, right? In terms of what do they have to fix moving forward? But we're at the halfway point of the season, and it's the same. The biggest concern, in my opinion, is that it seems to be the same thing over and over and over again. At least if it was a moving target, maybe there would be some solace in, well, we fixed this, right? And then maybe there's something else to fix where you at least maybe feel like you're moving forward, you're progressing. But the fact that it seems to be the same issues against a similar style of defense that you're struggling to find success against, you just have to wonder, like, all right, what's it going to take to finally push you over that hurdle, right? To get over that, to get past it, to be like, okay, we're on the other side of it, and now we can start stacking some success. So that's the big question that this team has to answer right now.
Yeah, for sure. There's no question about it. What was odd to me in the post-game presser from Matt was that he called the run game both solid and effective in that game. And I didn't know, like, again, some of that maybe is just heat of the moment, not being able to go back and watch the tape yet and look at all the statistics. But to me, 22 carries for 76 yards, 3.45 yards per carry for Jacobs and Wilson combined. Obviously 21 of that, Jacobs only one for Wilson. But again, less than 3.5 yards per carry. That to me is neither solid nor effective. And so I tried to ask him, going back to last year and against Tennessee and Indianapolis, when Jordan Love is out of the game and you have to basically like reinvent your run offense on the fly to put together a successful run game. And they're able to do it with flying colors. I mean, that run game and those specifically, I think it was the Indy game, but even the Tennessee one as well was so fun and unique to watch. And it felt like they had not only the blocking, but the play design and the play calling that all were working cohesively to put together a really fun run game. And now it seems so unimaginative at times. It just, again, a lot of inside zone out of shotgun, and they just cannot get anything going with it. Maybe you could have asked the question a little bit differently, but it's hard to see anything but regression from this offensive line when we've seen a lot of these guys. It's not like I know Banks is new or whatever, but you going from Myers to Banks should not be that big of a decrease where now you just can't run the ball at all. It's a lot of guys that you've spent a lot of time with in the past that have been successful for you in the past. And right now they just cannot get anything going.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. Just the imagination, right, that we saw last season in the run game. And I wonder if the lack of that is to execution. Like, all right, here's the fundamental aspects of our offense, the inside zone, the outside zone. Like, we're not doing that effectively, right? Like, we are struggling to do that. So maybe there's a hesitancy, whether maybe there should be or not, to be like, well, I'm not going to put more on their plate, right? I'm not going to add more wrinkles when we can't do the basics, the fundamental components of it. So I wonder how much that's factoring into all this, where it's like, we just got to go out there and win our one-on-ones. Are our hands in the right spot, right? What's our footwork? Is our blockers, are they the low guys, right? And I think that's like right now they're trying to, working their way to step 5. They might only be at step 2 right now from an execution standpoint. And that just, to your point, limits the imagination limits what you can call and dial up if you're Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah, if you can't do some of the stuff that's core staples of your offense, it's tough to add too many more wrinkles on top of that. And right now, it doesn't feel like they've got the basics down. So getting into offensive line play 301 and 401 when 101 is a problem for you, may not be the best solution either. It's very fair. Let's jump over to special teams just really quick. I thought mostly a nondescript game from the special teams. You had one pretty good kick return from Savion Williams. Romeo, I think, had like a 12-yard return at one point. You did have the play from Bo Melton where he stepped in the end zone. To me, that's just a, heat of the moment sort of play. You did have 2 touchbacks by Daniel Whalen, but again, nothing that really cost you the game. You had a 64-yard field goal attempt missed at the end that didn't come close in a situation that seemed like a impossibility going into it. But I think the big question for me is, I don't know how to make heads or tails out of this kicker situation, Paul, where we heard from McManus that, this was the first game he felt semi-healthy, and yet you went with him in 2 other games when you've had a healthy kicker literally on your active 53-man roster. All things equal, if McManus is back healthy, to me, it made sense to go back to McManus. If he's not healthy and he's missing kicks, and now you can't maybe attempt some of the longer ones like they had in the high 50-yarders early in this game because maybe he's not 100% healthy. To me, the whole thing is just mind-numbing of carrying 2 kickers on the 53, but deciding to go with the injured one for a couple, if not all of the weeks so far, when the other kicker was I don't know how to make heads or tails of it. It doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to figure it out on the fly, right? And try to navigate, like the injury is still week to week at this time. And again, I think I mentioned this last week, like if all things equal, both kickers fully healthy, like I 100% get why, even though play that Haversick had in those 2 games, why McManus is their guy, the track record, right? But the question, like you said, is if he's still battling these injuries, should he have been out longer to be fully rested and healed, which initially seemed to be the plan, right? Sitting out those 2 games. And so this doesn't linger, doesn't affect us down the stretch. Well, it has these last couple of games. And with those opportunities, the only thing that I can think of, and this is just going off of what LaFleur says, what Bisaccia says, is that the confidence that they have in McManus and as he works through this injury stems from what they see in practice. Like, again, these are closed doors. We don't see this, but what they're seeing in practice is Brandon McManus being Brandon McManus, but that hasn't translated over to the field on Sundays, right? No. And not even just in makes and misses, but perhaps in some of the decision making. I mean, the Carolina game, that 4th and 8 versus going for it in the red zone versus taking the field goal at that point. Or as you mentioned, they had some other scoring opportunity or potential longer range field goal attempts that they could have made in this game. And it's absolutely having a lingering effect on some of these outcomes, right? And points being on the board versus off. So it is a head scratching situation right now. And like I said, the only thing that we really have to go off of is, again, their confidence stems from what they're seeing in practice, what he's doing there, putting kicks through the uprights. I'm sure the technical side of it is in line with what they want to see. And that's the catalyst behind these decisions. And just one other thing on special teams in general, what gave Green Bay, when it was 0-0 for that long stretch, the Packers felt like they were routinely on the cusp of at least being in field goal range. And I thought Whalen, that punt coverage team, and then obviously the defense to have short possessions, but the Packers were dominating, I thought, the field position battle throughout the game. Like they're starting at their own 40-yard line, like close to midfield, and Philadelphia is routinely backed up inside their own 20. So punt coverage unit, I thought, did a really good job for much of the game to help Green Bay at least be in a position where even if they pick up on a few of those drives, like one extra first down, it's like, okay, maybe we can kick a 50-yard or 55-yard, like at least get a couple field goal opportunities. I apologize. I don't know if I'm going to get this exact, but there was something like 6 of the Packers' 8 possessions they had crossed midfield, or 5 of 7. It was
a ton of them. Yep.
It was a really high percentage. And in today's NFL, where kickers are, 60-yarders is kind of a norm right now. Like if you're getting across midfield, like I said, you're a first down away from all of a sudden being in field goal range. And in a 10-7 game, that extra field goal, those extra 2 field goals would have made a lot of difference.
Yeah, I know Eli Berkovitz pointed out as well, over the last 2 games, the Packers have had 11 drives. I saw somebody post 12 too. It was either 11 or 12 in opposing territory, and they've scored only 20 points in those 11 or 12 drives in opposing territory. It just kind of, again, goes back to the offense and just struggling to find that consistency, that rhythm, and what makes them tick and allows them to have the point production that they need to be successful. Yeah, they're going to have to figure out the kicker thing. I did think overall special teams had a winning performance. They also had the punt rush that led to a shanked punt as well, which was important. But yeah, unfortunately, they couldn't do a whole heck of a lot with it. And now from a kicker standpoint, they're again going to have a short week to figure this out and see what they want to do. But my guess is it's McManus again, but we'll see what they decide this week. Really quick before we get you out of here, Paul, thoughts on Packers Giants and what Green Bay needs to do to get this thing turned around. I know if Matt gets up at the podium and says if he had the answers, we wouldn't be talking about it. So I know it's a tough question, but I'll let you do your best.
I'm gonna just zoom out a little bit here, and we'll end this on a positive spin, right? If I can't remember if I've used this analogy on here before, I apologize, but the NFL season, right? Chapter book. We just closed chapter 10.
Yep.
So we're a little over halfway through our favorite book right now, right? NFL football. A lot can happen. A lot can change. At 5-3-1 on the season, still, I know it's a 7th seed, but still in a, I would say, advantageous situation. And really everything that the Packers want to accomplish, whether it's the 1 seed or not, we'll see. But they have 5 NFC North games left. Like, that's going to determine, right, where they finish in this seeding, whether they get a home playoff game or 2 home playoff games or what their overall record is. So there's still a lot of book left to be read. And again, some of the most important matchups of this season are still ahead of the Packers, which gives them the opportunity to still be in control of where they end up. Now, having said that, that's I know, looking through rose-colored glasses right now. But in order to make that a reality, right, is they have to figure this out. These, and I use this a lot on here, I know, but these have to be learning opportunities. And learning opportunities aren't a bad thing. They can be a good thing if they are actual learning opportunities and corrected. And that's the big question. That's the challenge that this team has to figure out. But really high level defense that they're operating with right now. And if the offense can get going and find some consistency, I think, again, if we're searching for positives right now, if we're looking for something to hold on to, the way this defense is playing, this offense doesn't have to go out and put up 30 points a game, right? They need to go 21, 24 would do the trick in a lot of these games. So still time left, obviously things to be corrected. But again, I think the big thing as well, and I mentioned it, was 5 division games left. Like, those are the games, again, that are going to play such a key role in defining what's their final record. Did they win the North? Did they not? What seed are they in the playoffs? Do they have a home playoff game? So those are the big ones that are upcoming.
Do they get in the playoffs? That's also a fair question at this point, but now hopefully they can. Hopefully they can make that run. Every NFL Super Bowl story has adversity at some point in it. I'm not necessarily saying at this point in time that Green Bay is ready to write that story moving forward, but there is adversity that you have to face. You have to face it head on, and you have to come out the better side, or out the other side better for it. We know there's one of 2 ways that this can go. Green Bay is either going to continue the same vicious cycle that we've seen, in which case it's going to be a very unpleasant rest of the season, or they can learn from their mistakes, improve, get better, evolve, and hopefully make something out of this and see what they can do come the end of this season and maybe in the playoffs as well. I'm hoping for the latter, and I'm hoping for an epic final chapter of this story, as you would put it. But they've got a lot of thinking and writing and going back to the drawing board to get to before they can get to that point. And hopefully that starts in earnest today, and we start seeing those results coming up on Sunday. Paul, I cannot thank you enough. Tell us where we can find your incredible work and anything you want to plug on the way out.
I appreciate it, Andy. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Bretl. Find all my written work, the Wisconsin State Journal, and you can find me on ESPN Lacrosse radio waves throughout the week, Sports Lead, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6.
Yeah, the Wisconsin State Journal every week with Paul is fantastic. Worth signing up for the membership. So go do that. Support Paul. He does an absolutely incredible job. And of course, find him on social media at Paul_Bretl. You can find me at Andy Herman NFL. That's going to do it for us today. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.